Welcome to this continued, important, vital study on the abomination that causes desolation. And of course, we cannot do a study without there being the self awareness, self analysis. So we're not participating in the grand march of Satan of being Magog to the Gog of this world. So, what we don't want to do is walk away, have insights, but never apply it to ourselves, because that would be the whole point, that we ourselves are not going to partake of this rebellious uprising against God, and to think that we're going to somehow wiggle out of the consequences, like we could talk our way out of everything. We can't. Or we could reframe ourselves out of anything, but you can't. So it is going to be important that we go through and we gain these insights. There is a total pattern that we've been looking after. It's so consistent that if you refused to apply these insights to yourself, it will only create a greater condemnation. It's already important to understand that you can't just have light presented to you and then just walk away thinking that I don't like the truth, so I'm going to go ahead and refabricate truth to suit me, to sew together my fig leaf garments to make sure that they fit my ego or they fit my narrative that I want to have about myself. So this is important. We have to have this talk before we get into it, because what you're going to see is what happens. This is the abomination that causes desolation from Lucifer, and it tracks all the way through to the idea that you started to look with an exploiting eye upon something, Satan. You saw a way in which you can gain, a way in which you can prevail against. This is the sin of presumption. This is a way that you could seize things for your own glory. And so you see the opportunity. You see the watch on the table and everyone's asleep, and you walk out with the watch. You exploit the vulnerability for your own gains, and you despise the very person in whom you've exploited. Remember what happened to Tamar and Amnon. He hated her more than he loved her after he raped her. There is something about despising the very one that you're using. Hold on, this is the great focus problems. And so you never respect or admire when your eye goes evil, even though it's based upon the benevolence and the generosity of the one in whom you are despising. You never gain respect for them. Judas did not respect Jesus. He lost his respect for Jesus. And a lot of times God's long-suffering and his tolerance and his patience causes you to think that he is facile, that he is weak, that he is without the majesty that you were once afraid of. And all you cared about is avoiding consequences. You cannot walk away from this study saying, I'm going to participate in that in many of the various spectrums of life, but never apply this study to myself. And the last part, which is going to be very important to the study, is the compensating once there is exposure and reproof, where God lifts the veil and you don't want to come under discipline. And then you now become hateful and resentful of true discipline, just discipline, fair discipline. And so you go from it being the extra wound, the extra hatred, the extra sensitivity, and then you walk away with the narrative of murmuring and hateful complaining, like they did in the wilderness, or like Cain. And you're going to walk away with that Lamech mentality that I will kill a man for a mere insult to my ego. And then Lamech went out and built great cities. So the compensating part is now you're going to make yourself great. Now you're going to compensate by being a Nephilim, a mighty one, a powerful one that everyone's terrified to confront. You know, sociopaths, psychopaths, narcissists, cluster B types all have that. If you confront me, I will punish you with my wrath. So you cannot participate in that and think, well, mine's a more kit version. Mine's a cuter version, and God's going to just wink at it. No, he's not. This is the very seed of Satan. And this is what it means to have no guile. You have got to deal with this core narrative to reframe and to very much hate the one that you are pretending to still respect, but you're looking to seize their throne. Like Satan, like the little horn power, looking to remove Christ, to sit on the throne and be worshiped. Now let that logic trickle down to every micro interaction of life. And God will trace it skillfully and accurately, because he does not want that seed in his kingdom. This is important. So as we go through and we see all these examples of doing that, this is the very cycle and system of the abomination that causes desolation. And it can be an abomination in you that causes your desolation, not just the abomination of a nation and its desolation, or the abomination of those that are on earth, children of wrath, and their desolation, which is all true. But we ourselves cannot collectively take part in that. And just because Satan has built a weird canopy of self-justifying, or of minimizing, or of the skill sets of flipping the script, Satan's favorite, it's called projection, or, it's this idea of imputation. It's fascinating how some people don't believe the doctrine of imputation, but then they practice imputation all the time. They impute a quality to someone that's not necessarily there, but they're going to treat them just as if. Imputation happens every day in our life. For us to not believe in it, we practice it. So let's look at our study, because we have to deal with the mind of the reactionary to God's discipline. How dare you correct me, says Lucifer. Says Cain. Says Lamech. Okay? Says Ham. Says everybody that gets comfortable with God's presence and decides that they are the great one, that they're the ones you cannot reprove or chastise or correct or discipline or give caution to. And certainly don't do it with a clear hand. They always want you to treat them with what's called soft garments, or garments of an important official. And that they're so sensitive, it's like insulting a king or a queen. And you see this mentality in the most ghetto, low rent situations. But that mentality is still there. It's where you get the idea of compensating by being the great one, the fallen one. That's where you get the word rabbi. Christ is warning against this, saying, don't let anyone call you rabbi. Which means what? Master of divinity. The great one. Or the respected one, and the seat in the house, and they are mentioned with great reverence, and everyone's so excited they're going to come and speak at your church today, or they're going to show up for our week of prayer or whatever else, and you get that great one reputation. So when people speculate in the book of Revelation, when it talks about the synagogue or the gathering place of Satan, they always say, well, it's the Jews or it's Catholicism. But the synagogue of Satan, or the gathering of Satan, is a catch-all for those who gather in this, a den of thieves, a place in which there is fellowship and gathering of this game that's been weirdly certified and legitimized, and everyone's kind of quietly in on the conspiracy of this greatness scheme, this hierarchical greatness in which, they're all winking and nodding and giving, these kind of subtext signals that this is what we're doing here. We're playing this kind of great game. So it's very important. Good to see you, sisters. It's very important that we understand this is Satan's impartation of his mindset of his evil eye, of his fallen face to the children of this world. The God of this world is trying to impart his mind. And this is a warning to the church to not partake of this mind in your gatherings, in your fellowship, in the phrasing and narratives in which we have normalized, where we could play these games in the most evilest form of that, in the mind of God, not in the mind of this world, not in the mind of psychoanalysts, not in the mind of podcasters, not in the mind of TV talking heads, not in the mind of filmmakers, documentary makers, but in the mind of God. The worst version is the religious version, and the wickedest of them all is the Christian version. Why? Because you're too close to the throne. You're too hard to detect. Your camouflage is too efficient. And you are going to be, in the end, the supervillain. Just like, you didn't have, at the time of Christ, you didn't have Babylon trying to kill Christ. You didn't have the Greeks trying to kill Christ. Rome did not want to do it. They acquitted him 4 times, said absolvo 4 times. And it was God's people. It was God's people that were in high positions in the temple, that were accustomed to the glory of God and playing these games before God, thinking that they could endlessly provoke God, but God will be a bad boy if he acts. And this is what they had already normalized in their cabal of what's an agreed upon version of God. That's what they do. They always kind of find a way to make you a prisoner of morals that they prescribe for you, but they would never prescribe it for themselves. They just project. And that's how they kind of keep you in that kind of weird prison where they're the warden, they're the law enforcement, they're the judge, they're the jury, they're the executioners. And God points that out as a synagogue of Satan, that they become the murderers of God's glory. And that is the abomination that will cause the desolation. That's why I'm bringing this up. So that's the Church of Satan. That's the real Church of Satan. I actually went and visited people from the Church of Satan that had a retreat in St. Helena, California, right by Pacific Union College, and where Ellen White's Elmshaven house is not too far from where the Church of Satan had a retreat there. And I went there with another brother in Christ to confront the people. They let me in through the gates, and I went in and talked to the Church of Satan people that ran this retreat center about the cosmic conflict and Christ and his humility and God humbling himself. And you should see the love of preeminence and dominance and self-glory and ego. That was really what, in fact, constitutes the Church of Satan. It's not rituals per se, other than the kind of rituals they're trying to impose upon you: eat not, touch not, handle not, to keep you in this form of compliance all the time. So you could constantly be guilted, and they could lord their dominance over you by using your moral code against you. That's what the Pharisees did. That's what Satan does. This is how he comes as an angel of light, a minister of righteousness. Okay? So it's that important to understand this house of games that Satan sets up in religious form. Okay? So you can't get away with it because God already sees it. If somebody is dumb as a rock as I am, can figure it out, do you think that God can't figure it out? Like God's going to be fooled by all this? No, anything but. So we're going to have to deal with Cain and his mark. And the idea of what fallen, the word fallen, we think of Nephalim. We just think they're giants. These are giants who are super violent. Well, you're going to see the word Nephal or Nephalim does not always mean a person of tall stature in a physical sense. It's also when somebody becomes angry at discipline, angry at their glory was not honored, their greatness was not honored. And what happens to them, Nephal, when their ego is wounded, and how they compensate through this murderous self-inflation. You'll see it. You'll see it in narcissism. You see it in everything. So it says that Cain, remember, and he was not a keeper of his brother. He was a rebounder. And then this is where you're going to get true apostasy. Let's go to Genesis chapter 6, verse 4. It says, there was giants, and it's the word Nephal, right? The great one. And what you're going to see, and hopefully I have this written down. Maybe I touched on it before, but that's where you get. I didn't put it here. I'm probably because I had in the last study. Is Nephal is when Cain's face fell, and God says, "Why has your face Nephal fallen?" And so it's really the real definition is fallen ones. But what is fallen about them? We just think they fell off the path of righteousness. It's true. I'm not saying that's not true. But the primary meaning to be fallen is your countenance fell. Your crest fallen. How you see yourself was crushed in your inflated state. And now you're going to exercise your executive power for life and death. You're going to kill based upon you become a law unto yourself. And just like in prison life, you insult me, you're going to pay the capital punishment of wounding the God me. That's really the best, clearest, most concise, and most accurate definition of the word Nephal. It's that. So you could say that they're giants, or you could say that the Synagogue of Satan, there were people that were Nephal. They all built an entire society upon this mentality. The God of this present age, the prince of the power of the air, has created this atmosphere, this noosphere, this basic consciousness of entitled arrogance. And if you wound me, you pay the ultimate price. You die. You're going to be ruined. And it doesn't have to even always mean, some people use the passive aggressive means that they destroy your reputation, your character, your everything else. They did that back in Christ's time through the synagogue system. They would cut off your business license. That's why everybody was afraid of the Jews, because they can literally destroy your reputation, your standing in the community, and even the ability to get a business license from the synagogue. In the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God, that was always a covenant language. People just try to make this mean that it's only talking about angels. Angels were called the sons of God. God's people are called the sons of God. Christ is, as the covenantal, came as a man, but he's God. His covenant that he has with the Father makes him a son of God. It's a person who is in right standing covenant with God. You're called sons or sons of God, those who are brought forth by him and declared as sons, just like what happened at Christ's baptism. So the sons of God are those that are in covenant with God. It does not mean, and you would never call fallen angels sons of God. They're not sons of God. They're fallen. They're Nephal. So you get the contrast here. There is no such thing as a fallen angel being called a son of God. They're not. They are Nephal. They are outside the covenant. You would never ascribe that quality to them. Came into the daughters of men. These were the daughters of Cain. This is the daughters of the entire offspring of that city they built out in the land of wandering, the land of No, and they built up and created the first big city, the super city. By the word for city in Hebrew is the word for chaos. And the word for wilderness, Debar or Midbar, is the word for order, for things happening seasonally and in order. The idea of a city being chaos is this: you can't distinguish night and day because it's Las Vegas or New York, the city that never sleeps. I want to be a part of it. New York. This is the whole Nephal city. You go there to be great. They bear children to them, so they mingled the seed. They mingled those that were in covenant with God, now with the daughters of men down in the plains of Shinar. To them, the same became mighty. That was the whole thing. This is where fame was created on earth. That was Satan wanted to be famous. Satan wanted to be glorified. Satan wanted to be worshipped. Satan wanted to be, cause the bowing of others around him. And then it became basically a star maker. That's where you get the word for stars from, or for the Tower of Babel, to go to the stars. It's the idea of creating these cosmic creatures out of human beings. stellar fame. The same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. Shem. In other words, to make a name for yourself. That's what that phrase is. It's they wanted to make a big name for themselves. You'll see it all over the place in ministry. And do these people take reproof? No, they don't. They debate incessantly over how great they are, just like the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And they believe that this debate platform only makes them great through this kind of team debate kind of warfare. And it's the idea of titans fighting over theology. That, believe it or not, is not of God's system at all. It's a synagogue of Satan. This scrambling for greatness, for recognition, for to be renowned. And it's so normalized that people think that the way I'm teaching right now is far-reaching. Like I'm going too far with this teaching. No, this is where it first lands, and then it could trickle down to other things. Like Christians that, want to become movie stars after kind of learning how to sing in a gospel soulful way, then they take it to R&B or something like that. That's further down the line stuff. This, we're getting down to ground zero where the bomb drops, and then it radiates out from there. So let's look at the idea of fame to make a name for yourself. The word Shem means a name. It's the two front teeth. You'll see that inside, or a fire to consume. It's the idea of being a consuming fire, right? Like God, or to be as one who reflects the fire. So a Shem or Hashem is the idea of like being a personality, being a character. It's the cult of personality, right? Was in all nations round about. Everybody was chasing fame. These are fame chasers. And then you have the fanboys and girls that are star chasers. And then 1 Chronicles 22:5, it says, and David said, Solomon, my son, is young and tender, and the house that is to be builded for the Lord must be exceedingly magnifical of fame, Shem, and of glory throughout all countries. This is the lust for glory, the lust for fame, the lust for greatness, the lust for validation, the lust for significance, the lust that people see you as the great ones, the mighty ones, Rabbi, 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 you mighty one, you mighty man of theology, you mighty woman of influence and adoration and beauty and whatever it is. We participate in this demonic system called the Synagogue of Satan. I will therefore now make preparation for it. So David prepared abundantly before his death. 1 Kings 10:1 says, and when the queen of Sheba heard of the fame of Solomon concerning the name of the Lord, she came to prove him with hard questions. This is appropriate fame, where God is famous, God is exalted, God is shown and spoken of as great, worthy to be worshipped. You see, when we play the dangerous fame game, and we want to jump in and participate in the fame game, be careful. You are playing with literal fire. That's what Shem is. You be careful. You could be consumed. That's what Shem means. And people just kind of heedlessly, without trepidation, without any real delay, there's no stagger in their steps. They just run right into the slaughter like an ox, just absolutely fleeing to it like moths to a flame. Like even my cautionary tale will say, I don't care. It's going to be worth my own annihilation. Hashem. So Ezekiel 23:10 says, and these discovered her nakedness, and they took her sons and her daughters, slew her with the sword, and she became famous among women. Now, this is talking about Jerusalem. This is talking about God's people. This is talking about the harlot that goes and pays her lovers. It cost her. And she doesn't care. She's that consumed with the idea of her renown, of being lusted after, trying to be destroyed. I just had a friend call me about a girl. He was asking me to help her with a counseling situation. And this is way across the world. This is nowhere near me. I don't even know this person's name. I don't even know the situation. So it's nobody that is in my life. But he's saying that this girl was raised by the single mom, but she was sent to go to school in Dubai. And the mother discovered that she's involved with all of this kind of super sexualized stuff around rich people and people that have money. And she's seeing her out, posing on this and that, the other thing. And she's, getting, as a good Christian girl, getting caught up with, beauty and porn and being lusted after by men. And she's throwing herself out there. She's 17 years old. And imagine this, she's at the kind of the flower of her beauty, and she's using it to attract this vacant daddy love. She's still dad thirsty because he abandoned the family and the single mom tried to raise her. So you're going to try to stop the vortex, the tornado that lives inside of her that is vacuous, trying to suck up man love and man worship and man adoration. She wants her power back. So she has a vacuum inside of her that lusts for this dad love, male love, power and authority. And basically what I'm going to say to my dear brother when we do talk and we get into how we can approach this clinically, the reality is you're fighting that. And you're fighting that. You're going to have to take care of yourself. The mother's going to have to take care of herself, because that journey tends to not end until there is nothing but desolation, destruction, and flotsam and jetsam of all the destroyed debris after a tornado. And you had better be ready to start picking up the pieces from your life when you are caught up in that kind of a vortex or whirlwind that lives inside of a human. So she became famous among women, even though she was naked. Her soul was naked. She had thirst, for they had executed judgment upon her. This abomination will cause your desolation. This nafal, this fallenness, this lust for glory and fame and greatness and validation, and all of the ways in which we're advertising and we're auditioning for, come here, fill this dark hole inside of me with greatness. That'll do it, because the hole is so great. The vortex is so great. The thirst is so great that I want a double big gulp of that will fill my thirst. And people are absolutely chasing and pursuing this to their own desolation. Numbers 16:2 says, and they rose up before Moses with certain of the children of Israel, 250 princes of the assembly of what? Famous in the congregation, the Synagogue of Satan. Men of renown. Who is this? This was the priesthood. This is Korah's rebellion. This is Dathan of Bible. This is God's people becoming like the Nephilim. Men of renown. Famous. Princes of the assembly, the Synagogue of Satan. This is the true meaning of the Synagogue of Satan. It's not referring to Zionist Jews, though they can fit in the category. But it's always talking about when God's people gather, how are you gathering? Are you gathering as a den of thieves? As a house of iniquity? Are you using God's name as a shingle to hang outside to draw all moths to the flame, to their own desolation, as you exploit them, as they nod and they wink and they're in this kind of house of games, a house of con, where everybody there that looks like they're total strangers are all in on the game? They're all winking and nodding and kind of subtexting of what they're doing. How many churches have become that, filled with elders and pastors and deacons and deaconesses or whatever? You get all the people, but a lot of people don't know what they're walking into. They walk into a church, and this game in a religious context is set up in front of you. And in fact, it is in the hard drive now. It's part of the hardware. They don't even know how to change it. Their culture is so established that they've galvanized their entire fellowship. The whole time they're using God's name. And every time you're hearing a sermon is to soften you up, to massage you, to make you vulnerable, to get you to subscribe to the moral code. So, and you, which you should, just what Jesus says, do what they say, but don't do what they do. They're a bunch of wolves and exploiters, and they're going to devour you. They're a bunch of snakes in God's house. And you think God doesn't see it? Because you put your hand on the wall, the serpent comes out and bites you. This is a assembly of serpents. This is a brood of poisonous vipers. But they hang out the shingle and they're telling you to be vulnerable and naked and authentic. And then they come in like every bad therapist would do and start to exploit that nakedness, that vulnerability. And they're using the name of God, the word of God, to do that, to bring you into submission so they could vampire off you. And God says, I know that happens. And I see that that happens. And I will hate and punish with great fiery indignation those things. So a lot of times when people are in the church long enough and they see how this kind of weird game is being played, you could either call it out, which you'll be punished for squarely, maybe even disfellowshipped, or you know what you could do? You could play the game. Play the game. And you could be a part of it and be twice the child of hell. And just play along with it because you know that's what works. And what's wrong with that? God's blessing you. People are listening to you. People are going ooh and ah. People are fascinated with you. People love to trumpet your name all over the place. It's worse than cheap games. They're dangerous and deadly games. They're the same games that was played before the flood. It's what caused the flood. And just like in the days of Noah, in the last days, God's going to say there is going to be an absolute pandemic contagion of this amongst God's people. Just like it was during the first advent of Christ, it will be no less, and in fact, in a more global level in these last days. Ezekiel 16, talking about the same woman of Ezekiel 23, us, God's people, Jerusalem, those that are close up to the Shekinah, the Holy of Holies, that participate in the Day of Atonement. And it says, Ezekiel 16, 14, and 15, and thy renowned Shem went forth among the heathen for beauty. You're fascinated with your own glory, like Lucifer. I mean, are we not seeing that this is the DNA? This is now the profiling of Lucifer. I mean, this is the template of how you become God's number one enemy. But we excuse it because we think, but we're doing it in God's house. God must be winking at it, and he doesn't. Which I have put upon thee, saith the Lord God, but thou didst trust. Here was the problem, was your trust in your beauty. And then you played the harlot because of your Shem, your name, your renowned, your bragging rights. You are someone that should never be disciplined or chastised or humbled or corrected or insulted in any way. Right, Lamech? 70 times 7. And poured us out of thy fornications on everyone that passed by. His it was. Everybody that comes walking into your circle of influence, you catch them up in this game. If they don't participate, you're going to show everyone that's caught up in your little cult of personality how much wrath and authority you have, and you're going to make them fear and tremble by the game that you just, with your flying monkeys and all of, you know, your proxies that you have, that you're winking and nodding, saying, go get them, get them. And this is how people fear and tremble, and then they reinforce your authority because they're just seeing how you just alienated. They were kicked out of the synagogue for fear of the Jews. And that's a real fear. Don't think the disciples did not have real fear in the kind of games that were being played. And it's being played very well today in the church, but it's global now. It's not just located in Israel. Daniel chapter 9, verse 15 says, and now, O Lord our God, thou hast brought thy people forth out of the land of Egypt. These are people that were converted. This is exactly the people Paul was talking about in 1 Corinthians 10. They were all delivered, but they all died in the wilderness. There's only a couple that made it out of there. You see, it's not once saved, always saved. It's not once I'm converted and then I'm immune from this stuff, or I'm under this kind of protective, God just winks at it and thinks, you precocious little child, you better stop it, you little bad boy. You know how there's certain, like I had a mom that really signaled, I'm going to punish the good boy and I'm going to Gucci goo and tickle and blow kisses at the bad boy. And everyone knew that my mother was your classic Ma Barker. Some people would jokingly call my mom Ma Barker because she wanted criminal children. She wanted to be the mom of a crime family. And I just didn't want to be a criminal. But when you come forth out of the land of Egypt with a mighty hand, I mean, you can have miracle stories. You can have an amazing testimony. You could talk all about how God brought you out of the world and deliver you from drugs and deliver you from sexualizing, delivering you from your life of sin and violence and everything else. And then you've gotten the renown. That's why I was always very, very suspicious of people that lead with their fame, with their testimony or whatever. That's why I was so reluctant to share my testimony, because it's a lot of fascinating things that I know would appeal to people. And so fortunately, people despise me enough now that they're addicted to despising me. And if I give my testimony, they say it's a lie. It's the opposite. Like I have a non-lying testimony. I don't have to lie. Anyone that knows me, people that knew me before as a Christian, they're the ones saying, dude, you had the craziest life, because they were there. They saw it. A lot of people from my past, before I was a Christian, will check in with me. They can't believe I'm still alive. They said, dude, we thought you were killed or something a long time ago. To me, it's a miracle, right? But be careful of those who gotten the renowned as at this day. We have sinned. We've done wickedly. This is wicked, man. This pursuit and lust for fame and glory and power and prestige, and this idea of we need to be called great and renowned, and we need to make everyone bow and scrape and lick our boots and kiss our ring. Of course, not that grotesque or that, gauche of a version of it. We do find ways to create the very nuanced version of sipping from that fountain. You know what I mean? All right, you go to work. I hope you do watch the rest of it later, because we're going to definitely get into some stuff. Now let's look at Nehemiah 6, 13 and 14. It says, for this reason, he was hired, that I should be afraid and act that way and sin, so that he might have cause for an evil report. Hashem. So you notice that the 10 spies that went in to Canaan land, and they had an evil report, and they said that these men are giants and we are but grasshoppers. If you read the Psalms, God says, I am the giant and everybody on earth are grasshoppers. That's how David saw things. No man was great, but God. When you start playing the great man game, great woman game, great church leader game, great podcaster, content creator game, great elder in the church, or whatever game, the games that we play, the matriarch of the church game, whatever. We play the games, okay? Let's not pretend here, folks. We got to stop pretending so we're not destroyed in the lake of fire. That evil report that came from those 10 is because they played that game. And so when they saw bigger and badder wolves, they were too busy worshiping them and shaking and trembling before them and saying, these are men of renown. These are real giants, real powerful people. We're nothing in their sight. It was only Joshua and Caleb says, who cares what we see? We're dealing with God. It's what men are in his sight. And that's a complete reversal. Once you understand who all men are before the sight of God, you're like Daniel talking to Nebuchadnezzar. You're not afraid. You're like Joseph talking to Pharaoh. You're not afraid. You're not being disrespectful, but you're also not afraid. You are not a respecter of persons, because guess what? That's enough to them. If there's the slightest insult to the men of renown, you're going to pay with your life if they have the power to do it. And men lust for that power. Men kill for that power. Men participate in the most evilest forms of initiation to get to those places of power, to fulfill the God syndrome that they have inside of themselves. That they may reproach me. Verse 14, my God remembereth Tobiah and Sanballat, according to these their works, and the prophetess Noadiah, no idea. No idea. And the rest of the prophets who would have made me afraid. This is it. This is that syndrome of making everyone afraid around you. Making everyone fear, oh, you're not going to be my friend anymore. You're not going to cast your protective coat over me. Oh, no, wait a minute. Let's renegotiate this. Playing that game. Okay? Be careful. And you're going to start seeing, because we're going to start getting to Cain. We're going to start getting into how this sequentially keeps happening. How to present yourself to cause trembling. In other words, how do you make other people tremble? Because remember, you're supposed to be working out your salvation where you tremble, you fear, you stand before God, or I should say not stand before God, but you bring your glory to the dust of the ground and you are flattened, that you are unraveled, that you are undone before God. This is the true posture before God. If you're trying to reverse that and make other people do that through your kind of Dick Cheney snarl between the lines, I have so much administrative power that I could ruin your life, you'll see. This kind of Beelzebub, watch all the little flies I send to come in to ruin your life. And all I did was just sit back and give the command with my finger. And look, all these people running to do my will, to execute my will, to destroy your life. That's a very powerful place to be, that you can operate from nuance and subtlety. God is saying that he knows when that person is doing that. When I was working this group home, and there's this girl named Tina that was always the level 5 top level kid, the ideal, client. And yet she was the one that was working all these other kids to do her will, and she was running things. And the staff let her have that position because they always had a kind of a correction officer mentality, the staff did, where, well, this person is a Leviathan keeping the peace, even though they're running things. And so if there is going to be like some kid getting beat up, she just has to look at two people and look at the person to be beat up. And they know exactly what to do. She used nuance and winking and signaling and all of that kind of stuff. And they would be rewarded by being like, in the inner circle, etc., that type of a thing. And so I called her out on it. Of course, she denied it. So I made her read the dictionary, the dictionary definition of patronizing and manipulation. And she knew I was coming for her. After I made her read it out loud through a very long and old definition of it, where it's very detailed, she knew I was coming for her. And she cried finally. And I was able to really get to her. But you should have seen how fallen her face was. Numbers 13, 32, and 33. And they gave the children of Israel a bad report of the land which they had spied out, the land through which we have gone as spies, is a land that devours its inhabitants. That's exactly this world. And all the people whom we saw in it were men of great stature. And literally, it's midah. Midah is the word for they had great garments. These are people that wore long robes. And we'll get into the study of this a little bit more. These are the people, it's literally the idea of someone who has great authority. And this is exactly what the Pharisees were, or those that have their master's of divinity, or people in the church. They kind of present themselves with this air of importance. They're wearing great garments. And they present those garments as what's called soft garments, that I'm so royal, so dainty, that if you offend me in the least, you're going to get a violent reaction from me, and I will destroy, your life will be nothing but a smoking ruin. Achan. We love to prance around and have fantasies of ourselves of how great we're going to be while we look in the mirror. And Satan will honor that. By the way, he'll honor that in the church, in the world, any version you want of it. The most important version is the one that's happening in the church. So you make sure that you create a den of thieves, so people that are truly poor in spirit cannot come naked before God, because they're going to be ripped to pieces by all the Gila monsters and all the kimono dragons, and and you're going to be like a little lamb thrown into a kimono dragon pit. These are men of great garments, Mita. And there we saw the giants, Nephal, the sons of Anakim, which come of the giants, Nephal, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, so we were in their sight. This is the worshipers of the synagogue of Satan, of the mighty ones, of the great ones, of those that present themselves with great garments and great power and great authority and great effective power, executive power, the ability to truly impact your life, to ruin everything, your finances, your respect in the community, your standing, even your safety. So let's look at this with Cain. Synagogue of Satan being well formed by Satan, and these are his children. These are the people that participate in this game. These are the ones that vibe with this. There's an answering chord inside of them when Satan offers his solution to life to you, and you say yes and amen. You have just subscribed to a prescription of death, of delusion and death. Is there too many sermons about this, or is there not enough sermons about this? There's no way that they would come up with these sermons in these churches. Do you know why? Because it would completely expose and dismantle and condemn everyone there. You can't keep this type of light in this type of clarity to a church that's participating in this stuff. It would defunct the entire church. It would completely delegitimize everybody. Everyone would have to repent, fall on their faces, weep, and plead for God not to destroy them. You'll never see these sermons. You have to go to knuckleheads like me, these losers that are outside the gate bearing a reproach, that are dismissed in a flick of the wrist. You're going to hear this stuff from those of us drinking water at the brook and getting crackers from ravens. You might hear this stuff. Genesis 4, 1-9, 11 to 19, 23, 26. In other words, let's take a look at the Nephal. Let's look at the synagogue. Let's look at what it means to be Lucifer at the throne. And then everything plays out in this compensating trip. Now, Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she, conceived and bore Cain. It's going to say why she named him Cain and said, I have acquired, or Canaan land, the wedding at Cana. I've obtained my golden child. This is the beginning of golden child narcissist. A man from the Lord. But the Hebrew is not a man, it is the man. It was the promised one. The man is here. It's like I remember I went to this in Oakland, and I was dating this girl at the time. And this was an all like black class. You know, there's like, they would all unite. I was the only white guy there because I was with her. And there's this guy that everyone called Daddy. Daddy. And he's like Big Daddy. Like he's the big daddy of everyone. And he was always that way. And even though this was a class reunion, he, even at that dinner and all of that, was the daddy. Everyone, he was the big man sitting at the table. He literally looked like, Suge Knight. I mean, he's a big old dude, right? And he had that whole daddy thing going on. And I remember I was even grateful for him because at some point he stands up and he tells everyone, get your kids under control. Your kids are running things. They're not running things here. Get your kids under control. Man, that whole place, that whole banqueting hall got their kids together. And then my girlfriend at the time says, that's why they call him Daddy. Like he's dad. What's interesting is he's that way and he's recognizing those kids are being daddy and being treated like the precious, like objects of worship in that house. And that's why you have no discipline. That's why kids cannot receive discipline, correction, any of this, because they're being so worshipped as Eve worshipped Cain. To create this monster, this ego-centric monster. Be careful that all of your good intentions to validate and affirm your children endlessly, and you're terrified to discipline them. My mom used to do it to my brother Tim, and I don't know if he's still alive, but I know he spent most of his life in prison. I've acquired the man from the Lord or of the Lord. And then she bore again, and this time his brother Abel. Now, this was your throwaway kid. Abel, which is the idea of like vaporous one, like he's nothing. He's vain. He's nothing. So I have my golden child, and this is my scapegoat. This is my ew. He's the Duke that does everything good and pleases God. Ew. I like my little rebel. The rebel without a cause, and he's so pretty, so good looking. And you know how it is. Eve weirdly has a soft spot for the dragon. I mean, she kind of, he was her first. Now, Abel was a keeper of the sheep, like David. Loser. He's the one running around taking responsibility for all these sheep to make sure they're okay all the time. He was this runaround, codependent, making sure that the sheep are okay. Everything's got to be okay. He's got to run around making sure everyone's okay. And he's a keeper of the sheep. But of course, Cain's not a keeper. He's a tiller. Everything he does is for his own advantage. Cain's thinking about a harvest for himself, for his own wealth, for his own prestige, for everyone to see that he's a man of action. He goes and makes things happen, and he's going to do it with the very ground that was cursed. He's going to bear fruit and then try to get that fruit to be, quote, presented as something that is not from the curse. It's something to be worshipped. But Cain was a tiller of the ground, and in the process of time, it came to pass, and we know process of time, literally in the Hebrew here, is at the end of time. It came to pass that Cain brought an offering of the fruit of the ground to the Lord. The ground was cursed for our sake. Be careful, because we have a tendency to bear any fruit that we turn it into something that's worthy to be worshipped. And God says, nope, anything that comes from the sweat of your brow is not worthy as an offering before the Lord. You do it as a servant. You sweat from your brow and produce the fruit of the ground as a servant, not as a God. Not as a Nephal, not as a great one, not in your Nimrod spirit. And Abel also brought out of the firstborn of the flock and of their fat. You see, everything's about away from him and the fat and the richness and the fullness and the best and the blessing. He put himself last and put forth, this is God showing his sacrifice, that the richness of everything is in him. This animal represents the offering of God, of the promissory covenant. And the Lord respected Abel and his offering, but he did not respect Cain and his offering. Wow, the wound. Here comes the wound to the inflated one, to the Nephal, to the one who's the man, the one who's obtained, to mommy's golden boy. And Cain was very angry, and his countenance Nephal. So his countenance became a giant? No. You saw the chasm open up, and now somebody's going to pay the price. God wounded him. Now somebody weaker, maybe a person who looks to please others, who in my eyes are a bell, nothing. Last thing I'm going to receive is any discipline, any correction, any chastisement from the nobody. And this is what God always sends his prophets as Abel to Cain. That's why they get slain all the time. First John brings that up. Christ brings that up. You want to know that you have an evil eye? Why is it that my prophets and myself come as nobody, of no reputation? of no renown. Can you guys see me? Did this just die? Tell me, please, if you guys still see me, because it says that I just died. Satan hates this study. I'm going to tell you this right now. I already know for a fact he hates it. Okay, I'm going to keep going. As if it's not dead, but it says that the tab closed out. Okay, cool. Here we go. Let's keep going. So it says, why are you angry? Why is your countenance nafalled? Right here, the fall. This is the mighty ones. This is where it all comes from. This is the compensators. This is the blowback. This is the reaction. This is the clapback people. If you do well, will you not be accepted? I'm not going to be a people pleaser. I'm not going to appease you, God. I'm the God here. Everyone needs to appease the raging, tyrannical, petty tyrant. Baby, that's me. And if you do not do well, sin, which is interesting, even the word sin here is the word even sin offering, lies at the door. In other words, your nature is crouching ready to pounce and to seize you. God's warning you before the pounce of your sin, but he's also telling you the provision of this sin. There's an offering. Do you want to participate in the humility of a sin offering, or are you going to allow this roaring lion seeking whom he could devour? Are you going to let him pounce, seize your spirit, your mind? And his desire is for you. Satan lusts after you because he wants to make you after his own image, after your likeness, after his likeness, after his character. Like the coin that has the inscription, rendered the things of Satan unto Satan. And that's where you get the word character from. But you should rule over it. Just like he told Eve, you're going to try to prevail or pounce upon your husband. And he told Adam to rule over her. Doesn't matter that, because God's got to rule over Satan. And that wickedness she partook of, she became Satan's proxy. She's now going to have a spirit to try to prevail, to try to dominate and to reverse God's order. And God's prescription for Adam was not to be Ahab or Herod Antipas. But they submitted. Now Cain talked with Abel, his brother, and it came to pass, here we go, when they were in the field, that Cain did what? Rose up against Abel and killed him. The rising up is the compensating. Here is that which was crouching at the door has just lunged forth and seized his prey and carried out his dastardly act. And then the Lord, here comes the conscience, because now that's going to be the next casualty, by the way. God pricking your heart and looking to get you to realize what you just did. That's danger 2.0. Now comes the most critical things. After you've done the dastardly deed and you gave in to that impulse, you now have time for reflection. You have a counseling session in which God is now confronting you and taking you through the process, and God has a remedy for you. But if your pride and your ego and your sense of fuel or reward that you got from your reign as king of your greatness, and you don't want to come off your throne, and you don't want to sit in the back pews, and you don't want to sit in the dugout, cool out for the season. That's what he offered Lucifer, didn't take it. And then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is Abel, your brother?" Because that quality of God making Abel a shepherd was a quality he was producing in Abel to be a leader, to be a Christ-like leader. Why did God have Moses tend to sheep for 40 years? Because he knew he would be straggling around the wilderness of millions of people, and you needed the servant heart. And then he does that for David. They are keepers. And that's not a small study in itself. You should just do a study just on a keeper, because God told Adam to keep. When he says, keep my Sabbath. See, God has this keeper mentality. He died in a garden and he was resurrected in a garden, and he showed up as a gardener, and he created his first humanoid as a gardener to keep, because that's the of no reputation mind of Christ, making himself not renowned, but as one that builds you and lifts you and provides for your needs. And it would be the sociopathic analysis to prevail over one that looks like a codependent before you. Weak. So God's testing him with the true mind of Christ. He says, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? You see how there's a clap back? God's questioning him. He's already started the questioning process. You see, with Adam and Eve, when God confronted them after their sin, God asked them 3 questions. Cain was already clapping back at God on question 1. Oh. The last thing I want to be is a keeper, a tender to others' needs selflessly. God's like, well, the mind of Satan has already taken hold of you, hasn't it? You're not here to be a keeper of sheep, a keeper of God's garden, a true pastor, a true shepherd, a true gardener in the garden of God. You're here to be worshipped. You're here to be a dragon god. Aren't you? God's like, wow, thanks for the clap back. Thank you for the contrarian knee-jerk response. That's exactly what everyone does when they're under just discipline, just correction. So verse 11, so now you are cursed from the earth, kind of skipping through this, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. I've cursed the ground for your sake. You use it as a form of worship. We got to take you to curse the ground times 10. Because you seem to gain fruit from the sweat of your brow, and then you turn it into an object of worship coming from your loins. And when you till the ground, it shall no longer yield its strength to you because of how you relate to that. He wants to put you in an ineffective place. So you're going to see his second clapback. A fugitive and a vagabond, and you shall be on the earth. This was exactly what happened to Ham, too, later on. You'll see this is the same pattern that keeps coming up, and God has the same prescription for the ego, for the inflatedness, for the compensating for the shame that they felt in their correction when God took them off their little plastic imitation throne. You either receive the humiliation or you clap back. Excuse me, I got allergies. And Cain said to the Lord, no. Nope, I don't receive it. Because he says my punishment is greater than I can bear. Then what can bear? His ego, the image he has of himself, he wants to maintain that golden boy, mommy worships you, I'm the king of the throne, my dad's a loser. Ham did it all. Satan did it. In other words, my punishment is greater than my ego can bear. Verse 14, surely you have driven me out this day from the face of the ground, the place that I got all of my applause and adulation and admiration and praise and love and worship from. You have driven me from my source where I am equal to you, God. You should have received my fruits as an equal, being nice enough to bring some fruit to your door, and I sent you a fruit basket. And what do you mean you rejected the fruit basket? How dare you? I shall be hidden from your face, because he did this in the face of God. He did this, the front row seat of the Shekinah, just like the covering cherub Lucifer, just like Nadab and Abihu, just like Eli's two sons, just like the Pharisees, Sadducees, and the high priest, Caiaphas, Annas. Lucifer does it in God's face. You cannot create the abomination that will cause your desolation unless you have an up-close view and you are before the Lord's face. There's only one condition in which you can truly be the mind of Satan. You have to not be far from God. You have to do it up close. Those with the most advantage of light. I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond on the earth, and it will happen that anyone who finds me will kill me. Look at there's a line in the street, exaggerated view. In other words, he's projecting everything that he is on everybody else. Who's the only killer alive? Who's the only killer in the room? Who's the only killer on the face of the earth? He's already projected that as a fear that everyone else is going to be like me. And I need to be spared of others that are like me. Do you see the dark psychology that's happening here? And verse 15 says, and the Lord said to him, therefore, whoever kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken upon him sevenfold. Of course, Lamech, who did the same thing, it's 70 times 7. And the Lord set a mark on Cain. This is clearly the context of the mark of the beast. A lot of people only see the Sunday law, the national Sunday law, as the mark, but that's the mark of its authority. That is a national and public and international sign of defiance of God's authority, coming under the Sabbath, which is resting under God's merits and righteousness that he's provided for us. It's the idea of like being in the canopy of the shade of somebody else's work, being the beneficiary of it. And of course, the mark of the beast that's on Cain is laboring under the hot sun, which was the first day of the week, which was the day of the sun. And the sun on the fourth day of creation represented dominion and rulership and authority and having dominance. Sun kings. I tilled the ground. I created. I'm a god. And you worship me as a sun king because I did all this under the sun. God, of course, doesn't acknowledge anything done under the sun other than what servants do, unprofitable servants. That everything done under the sun is vanity of vanity. There's no merit to it. So that's what the Sunday dominion authority of the Synagogue of Satan is talking about. Sabbath is represented by those that are like Abel, that realize that this is the works of a God that brought his own merits, his own power, his own strength of a bullock, and the fat thereof, and that he provided something for us that we rest in. And then Abel's just telling Cain, this is the true religion here. Cain, you're creating a whole new religion, lest anyone finding him should kill him. So what is he going to do? He's going to make himself ferocious, impenetrable, invulnerable. He's going to be a fortified city in human form, and then he's going to go around creating fortified big cities, and they're going to protect this kind of big, giant ego called, it was called through Ham and his offspring, right? The Cushites. It was called Egypt. It was called Assyria. It was called Nineveh. It was called Babylon. The big, mighty city. I mean, imagine those cities as the psychology of a single person. You'll have an idea that it is reflective of the brain of Cain. That anyone should kill him. God forbid that he should receive consequences for his murder of his own brother that dared to correct the golden child. Then Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod, of wandering. It's the picture of the Azazel scapegoat, out into the wilderness, wandering, ready for his fearful, looking forward to judgment. And with this weird paranoia, east of Eden, Cain knew his wife. She conceived and bore Enoch. Enosh, which is the idea of mortal, weak. And what did he do? Here's a compensating right here. He built a city, called the name of the city after the name of his son. And this is this weird idea of legacy, trying to create a sense of continuum. If you want to get into the real Hebrew language, the idea of a son or a seed, or the idea of Adam, a blood, is the idea of begetting, creating a name, creating a legacy, creating a lineage of greatness. And the city is going to protect that, is going to enforce that, is going to draw all to a kind of a throne room of God on earth that you could see in the middle of the plains of Shinar, the wilderness. So to Enoch was born Irad. I don't want to go through all. That's where you get the various names, and I'm just then Lamech. That's what I want to get to. And he begat Lamech. Now Lamech is interesting, where you get lamentation from, to mourn, to grieve. So in his deep depression, in his Lamech, he took for himself 2 wives. Now here comes finally polygamy. Beginning of it starts here. Christ says, hey, from the beginning, we didn't have all that. That was for greatness. You see it in still Islamic communities, etc., Mormonism, because they think of themselves as gods. 2 wives in the name of one was Ada, and the second wife was Zillah, which is beauty and shadow, or, that which echoes or shadows him. So these are the 2 women that kind of went as oracles for the great man Lamech, in which his lust for fame and his desire to build up the great cities. And this is where you get the entire environment that caused the flood. It came from Lamech. And so what does he do? Verse 23, and then Lamech said to his wives, Ada and Zillah, hey, I'm a great man. Go around and make sure everyone's convinced of this propaganda. So they became, the two propaganda queens, Tokyo Rose and whatever. And hear my voice, wives of Lamech. Listen to my speech. Listen to me. I'm important, right? You better listen to me because I'm going to tell my tale to you, and I'm going to build up this whole mythology about me, and I want you to go around convincing everyone of what a great man I am. And so they became his ghostwriters for his biography and then did a book tour. And then it says, for I have killed a man for wounding me. I'm even more dangerous than great-great-grandpa. You thought he was a scary Harry. I'm a scary Barry. I'm a scary Jerry. I'm a scary Larry. Which I had a friend, his name was Larry. And even as a kid, he was a sociopath. He would lock kittens inside of a safe and only give you one number a day. And then they would either die or not die. I'm sitting there all day long trying to get these kittens out of this metal safe. I remember him cutting the bills off these ducks that he would capture. And then, not capture, his mom got him. And then take a razor blade and cut their bills off. Or he kidnapped my brother one time and tied him up, and I had to go and rescue him. And it wasn't like this easy rescue. It was this huge rock fight and everything else. I remember me and him got into it one time, and everything was about payback. Well, long story short, I found out. I said, hey, anyone know of what happened to Larry? It's like, yeah, he's in jail. He murdered his wife. He killed her. Beautiful, beautiful young girl. And she was leaving him for his abuse. And he wanted to talk to her and this and that. And so he shows up at her place and strangles her to death. And then he slits his wrist superficially and says, come and rescue me. I'm a broken man. And then he has that scary Larry thing. Lamech. For wounding me. Even a young man for hurting me. This is the big crime, right? You never wound this rabbi. You never wound this great man. You never wound this inflated one. You never wound the one who's that ego invested, especially when they're building up the mythology about themselves with the women in their lives. So he says, if Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, Lamech 70 times 7. So when God is telling Peter, forgive 70 times 7, or God sets up prophecies that are 70 times 7, he's saying, you could repent even as a Lamech. Like God's, and that's next level stuff. You have Cain, and then you have this sub-training level 70 times 7. God's still appealing to you that he has forgiveness enough for anybody that repents. But the problem is, does a Lamech ever repent? If you're Lamech, that you would kill someone for an insult, like that's what happens in ghettos. That's what happens in poor Islamic countries. That's what happens in the most ridiculous environments, that people are super low in their own kind of self-hating vortex, that the slightest wound, and this mythology that they run around how great, and they call themselves like, Charlemagne the God, or, Wheezy, Jehovah, these God names. I mean, huge in the community of Lamech, of Ham, of Cush, of Sheba, of the Sabians. There is just this mega worship me, I'm great. I can't be touched. I can't be wounded. That is the spirit that is activating and energizing the world now. It's in the very air of the internet. It's in the very atomic particles that are around us. And Adam knew his wife again, because now we have to get a second Adam like a second man, and his name was Seth. For God appointed another seed for instead of Abel, whom Cain had killed, and for Seth, to him also a son was born, and he named him Enosh, which was a new history. Because remember, Cain had his son called him Enoch. And so now Seth is a redo. Seth is the picture of redo. A second Adam, a second history. Enosh. And then men began to call upon the name of the Lord for forgiveness, to be sons of God, to be in right covenant with God. That's what that's talking about. That there was a gospel of a second Adam out there. All right, we're in an hour, 20 minutes. Let's see how far we can go. God help us. Yeah. I know I go too slow through these studies. What's interesting is we go through so much scripture. Like, there's no way I can go through all this. Yeah. We'll go through it. I mean, somehow we'll get through these series because we need to really spend time in this. Look at end there. There's no way. But I'm going to go slow and marinate through this because we're going to have to really get it. It's funny because people really don't understand how much scripture is telling these things. A lot of times I'll get people commenting saying, yeah, but your teachings are so unbiblical. Actually, I have people calling that. It's like, I think we're pretty much covering a lot of Bible ground. Oh, it's not what you want to hear. That's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. All right. Right, sister, did you name your two cats after Zillah and Adah? So Genesis 6, this is still kind of the Noah's Ark. This is the condition of the, man, I'm really itchy for this allergy. I'm sorry, guys. Is Genesis 6, verses 1 to 8, is a picture of why God desolated the world because of this abomination now was a contagion and affected the rest of the world. And the spirit was having no effect. And just like in the days of Noah, you're going to read today. This is today's newspaper. This is today's Psychology Today, globally, worldwide, and in the church. So Genesis 6, 1 to 8 says that it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth and daughters were born unto them. Oh, here comes the bad parenting plan. The sons of God, those that were in covenant with God through Seth, saw the daughters of women that they were beautiful. They were fair. These were traps. These were lures. This was Proverbs chapter 5, Proverbs chapter 7. Chapter 7 is where I think she makes all of these excuses. It says, I've made offerings and my husband's away for a while and I've already made peace offerings and atonement with God, So don't worry, we could just get really religious after this. And I've had a friend who did that. He was having extramarital sex. He was living in my home. We're in ministry together. I'm confronting him about it. I'm being restorative, redemptive. He's pleading for help. And he doesn't stop. He doesn't want to stop. She's an addiction to him. And they are completely, massively obsessed with each other. And I tried intervention after intervention, loving him. I mean, this was one of my youth. And he says, I can't do it. She's too beautiful. I'm not a virgin anymore. I feel like I'm addicted. I feel like I just can't help myself. And so what did he do? He got really religious after all of that and then went to seminary, got his degree and became a pastor in Vermont. And then started looking down his nose at me that I'm so beneath him, that I'm so passe, that, I remember my David phase when I'm all convicted about things. And, that mentality. So anyway, the sons of God, those that were in covenant, saw the daughters of men. This is out of the city Enoch. That they were fair, they were beautiful, they were to be desired. looked upon to make one wise. And then they took them wives, all of which they chose. This is exactly what happened after the Exodus out of Babylon. And then they started looking upon the daughters, these guys that were in covenant with God. God delivered them from Babylon after 70 years, and they started it all over again. There is something about this patterning that we need to pay attention to that has a weird way of intoxicating us and getting us to legitimize a rebellion. And it looks like a good thing. It looks like a legitimate thing. And to this day, even this beautiful friend of mine still has that religious arrogance about him. And it's really sad to see him and his wife and all that. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man. Why? Because this is now this is the rebellion. This is our clapback. This is our arguments. Am I my brother's keeper? These are the knee-jerk reactions in our spirit of being contrary. Nuh-uh, you are. Nuh-uh, you are. You'll see that in the two classes that are ego-filled debating. No, you are. No, you are. Nuh-uh, you are. Like, do you see what the clapback? It's the whole I blame you of what I do and you blame me of what you do. And we're just going to sit around casting projection on each other. And that's a false form of atonement. That's imputation and rolling the burden of guilt off you. And then they're going to impute and roll the burden of guilt. And it's a weird marriage. That's why I call it making out under the bleachers. They're all participating in the same defilement of false atonement, of projection and rolling and casting their burdens upon another. And it's a weird exchange that they do for each other. And they're weirdly fascinated with each other. It's like a love-hate marriage. And you think they're on opposite sides. And they're both trying to curry and rope you in, to lasso you into their team, and then getting you to participate into this false atonement. For that he also is flesh, and yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants, Nephal. So even forget the word giants, just say there were Nephal. There were those that looked to clap back against God and to compensate by making themselves great. I don't care if it was genetic engineering to make themselves huge or giant, or they were using peptides or, personal coaches, or to accumulate lots of money and beautiful women in their life. Whatever a Nephal does. It's in the church. And then the earth in those days, and also after that, when the, quote, sons of God, those that were in covenantal relationship with God, those who called upon the name of the Lord, this is their downfall. This is where they mingled their seed, in which God had promised to be as a seed to come through a line of heritage and legacy genetically, so he could be the second Adam and redeem mankind. Satan has always looked to poison God's seed with his seed. It's not talking about angels having sex with people. The, quote, daughters of men were those out of covenant with God. Those that were the sons of God were in covenant with God. It's not talking about fallen angels. Nephal angels are never called sons of God. Satan is a Nephal. He was out of covenant. Came into the daughters of men, and they bore children unto them. And so it says that wisdom is shown by its children, by its fruit, by its works, by its outcome. And evil the same way. So the same became what? Mighty men were of old, men of renown. Here it is, the greatness compensation. Do we even know how dangerous money is the root of all evil? And money does not always mean cash. Like in ancient time, many means like having many. Money comes from the idea of many, or a gathering of much things. And it causes great weight. So money means to weigh out many coins, or the idea of many shekel Perez. And it's the idea of weighing things out. And so we see ourselves as weighty, full of glory with the accumulation of things, not just material things. There's social things, there is glory things, there is esteem things. The biggest thing is renown, fame, and glory. People get money for renown. See, that's why it says money is the root. It's not the money itself from this fruit that pops up, which is what? Glory and renown, to be validated, to be recognized, for everyone to know your name, and to bow and scrape and to tremble when you walk in the room. It is so much in the church that we call that God blessing a ministry or God blessing a person. We have so convoluted this idea that if it's happening in the church, we believe that God is the author of that, but it's their love of money. Like even the church today, there's this big split around where the tithing should go. And there's ministries lining it with the guy saying tithing should go to the independent ministries such as us, et cetera. And they're so hyper focused on that, that really is for their renown, for their glory as to be these content creators, these YouTube, giants, men of renown. They see themselves as we're the defense attorneys for Jesus Christ and his theology, but it's really Pharisaical. It really is for renown's sake. It was everything that was happening 2,000 years ago in the Second Temple, in which Christ came to the diseased institution. It was all normalized. It was the Synagogue of Satan. It's happening now. I don't see it being called out, but it's happening now. It's not even being discerned. Forget about calling it out. People are too enchanted and have drinking from the cup themselves, decided to be bootleggers, along with Zilla and Ada. Well, they've been propagandized. That's the way, we're all supposed to play along with this big show in which it's the golden boy. We all got to worship and kiss the ring of golden boy. Then they have the cheerleaders, all the fangirls and fanboys cheerleading this on. So it's like, okay. And the people get all hot and bothered over when that person's name is mentioned, and that's your worship. But we call that Christianity now. And verse 5 says, God saw the wickedness in man that was great in the earth. This is wickedness to God. When the sons of God fall into this, and now they've lost their discernment, and now they are at war with the Holy Spirit, and the Spirit's striving upon them, they want nothing to do with it. They don't want God's chastisement. They don't want God's instruction, correction, discipline. They don't want to experience shame. They don't want to be sent down to the lower notches where they're no longer at the highest levels. They don't want to be wanderers and a vagabond. They don't want to take the back seat. So they refuse God's medicine for ego. And that every imagination of the thoughts of the heart was only evil continually. Vain imagination, everything that exalts itself against God and his glory and the throne of God, in which God alone deserves that glorious fame, glorious renown, glorious praise. That is the great danger, is the love of glory. More than gold, more than girls, more than clicks, more than subscribers, more than ministry opportunities, more than everyone talking about you and your name is upon the tongue of many people, more than you getting the top seat at the potluck, is glory. It's God-likeness and being admired. And we think it's legitimate because I was abandoned. I was wounded. I was forsaken. I was demeaned. I was humiliated. I was not honored. I was not respected. Or I have an entire culture of being told how great I am, how amazing I am, how I'm going to be great one day. And mommy made me really think that I'm a god. And mommy treated me like a god. Even the police weren't allowed to discipline me. Either way, that vacuous hole that we legitimize in our mind because there's this sucking low dark valley that is vortexing in our soul, that's sucking up everything, seems to be the license and validation for everything because everyone's got to, quote, get their power back, right? So there was every imagination and the thoughts of their heart were on this destructive course in a continuum daily. This is their daily fuel. This is their daily prescription. Okay. And it repented the Lord. In other words, it made the Lord say, I don't know if this was good. What sorrows did I bring upon myself in making man? God made himself vulnerable to us because of the delicacy of free will and the fragility of making the man of the dust and his quick lust for glory because the sucking vacuum that's inside of them of the unbearable low self-esteem and the negative self-hating, thought spirals, shame spiraling, that they're immediately going to try to get their power back by being the opposite, like a person who is bipolar or a person who suffers from Great Depression. They want to be as far from that dark place as possible. So it means being a god and being worshiped and being admired, being a superstar. Go to Hollywood, be famous, hate everybody that doesn't worship you. That'll do the trick. That'll work. And I will be the exception. And then when I get everything I want, I will be good to people. I will be kind. I will be benevolent. So they get really excited that they tip big at the bar or at the restaurant or as the person that's working as a valet somewhere. It's really weird. And then they say, see, I'm a good person. I tipped Juanita, who's from Guatemala, and she makes enchiladas for my kids every Thursday before she takes a couple days off. And I'm a good person. That's why I don't believe we should make immigration illegal, because those are the people that pick our avocados and work picking oranges and make enchiladas for my precious babies. God says, I am sick. That he had made man on the earth, and it says it grieved him to his heart. And we're like, what? We're just too busy kind of dripping in our self-styled glory saying, what do you mean? I'm beautiful. I'm amazing. I'm going to make my kids gods where they're not male nor female. They're in a spectrum of male and female, and they literally live in this God. We're just wondering, how come all these stars have these transgender? And I'm talking about the church still. I'm saying that's made grossly manifest amongst the star chasers, the glory chasers, the glam chasers. But that spirit is really in the church. That's why you have the worst kids in the church are the preacher kids, the PKs. They're tasting a religious form of that privilege. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, right? The number 666 is the number of man and beast. And the creeping thing, which is most people that are masters and great ones and men of renowned, creeping things, and fowls of the earth, which is representational of the spirits that inhabit them. Every foul spirit, unclean and hateful bird. For it repenteth me that I've made them. God made us for his glory. Now they are Satan's glory, and Satan is pawning off his religion to everybody, saying, isn't it great to be worshipped? Don't you love it? See, You don't have to directly worship Satan to worship Satanism. You just have to worship yourself and get others to worship you, and you're participating in the club, the Hellfire Club. But Noah found grace in the eyes of God. Noah means, right, to rest. And so, always the plan of salvation is a picture of resting in somebody else's righteousness. So, Noah becomes a preacher of righteousness. The ark becomes a symbol of salvation, of entering into somebody else's death, burial, and resurrection as the boat stays afloat. And of course, of a second Adam, in which that floating coffin rests upon a top of a mountain, which represents the throne of God, and its side opens up like Christ's riven side. And you had clean and unclean, the water and the blood in separate streams flow out, and there's a new heaven and new earth and an everlasting covenant. All these salvific parallels back to God's original plan. So I want to touch on this is, remember that word that I brought up that means robes or long robes? Where is it? It's back here. Right here, mita. The great garments, these soft garments. So let's talk about that, because this is exactly what Ahab was about. This is exactly what the Pharisees are about, and the leadership and the priest class and everything that inhabited the institution of God's people. When they murdered Christ, they have this long robe, this great garmentism. This is this where it says, and the length of each curtain shall be 20 cubits, the width thereof of each curtain. And this is talking about the curtains, and it's the length thereof. It is the idea of being great and decorated and religious. Leviticus 19:35, and you shall do no injustice in judgment in measurement of length. This is the idea of judgment and the long curtains or measurement in which you wear robes and you judge. And remember, these are things these curtains are before the glory of God. So it's the idea of wearing your robes like they are the curtains of the tabernacle, and you are judging before the throne of God. And God says this is the abomination that causes desolation. Look at this, 1 Kings 6:25. And the other cherub was 10 cubits, and both cherubim were of the same size and shape. It's of great length. It's those that are cherubs, like Lucifer, who are covering chairs before the throne. And they're judging, and they're wearing long robes. Be careful as you minister as fiery ministers of the law. That's your soft garments and your long robes and your hate and your spirit of judgment. 1 Kings chapter 7, verse 9 and 11 says, all these were of costly stones cut to size, trimmed with saws inside and out, foundations easy outside. It's right here, costly stones cut to size. This is the bejeweled fiery mountain, in which is a picture of a long colored robe, which is the grace, which is the throne of God, and there is a fiery stream. It's judgment. The long, colorful robes that are long and as covering cherubs that are stretched out in judgment. These soft garments. Verse 11 says, and above were costly stones hewn to size. Fiery stones before the throne, long curtains, judgment. Nehemiah 3:11 and 27. I won't try to pronounce these names. And it says, repaired another section. as well as the Tower of the Ovens. It's that word for long, gorgeous robes. The Tower of Ovens, of judgment, of seraphim, standing as a tower, risen up of great length, great authority, standing as a great one, as a rabbi, as a mighty one. And Christ likens that to the synagogue of Satan, the tower of the ovens, the one with the soft garments and long robes, and they judge as if they are covering cherubs like Lucifer, like Cain. After them, the Tekoites prepared another section next to the great projecting tower. This is the long robes. This is the cherub fiery sword. This is judgment. These are the great renowned ones. These are the ones who sit in judgment and make executive orders as to what is life and what is death for you. They are there as human towers, projecting great power, great authority, great height, to be seen and recognized by all. Are you starting to follow the dark psychology of all of this? Job 28:25 says, to establish a weight for the wind and a portion of the waters by measure. This is the word for renowned, great garments of judgment, to establish a weight for the wind and a portion to the waters by measure. We measure everything, we judge everything according to our great standard of the brevity and the width and the depth, the breadth of our judgment. Seeing themselves, judging as gods. These are what word studies can do to give you the robust psychology of it. I'm only teaching you this for an awareness of the psychology that's trying to creep inside of us. It's in so many content creators. It's in so much of the fame chasers, and they see themselves as great defenders of theology, but they're participating in this. Psalms 133 verse 2 says, it is like precious oil upon the head, running down on the beard of Aaron, running down on the edges of his garments. They are the anointed ones, and they see themselves is covered, and that their robes are flowing, and that they are the ones sitting on top of the mountain, and they're the great tower of the ovens in which they judge. And if you can't see that with the Pharisees, and you cannot see the parallels that go on in the hubris and the arrogance and dripping in religiosity and in churchianity, and you cannot see the parallel, that's the Holy Spirit being rejected by you because you want to participate in this game and you don't want anyone to tell you that it is not legitimate before God, because you have secret plans to participate in this, because you don't want to know. You don't want to be condemned for participating in this. So here comes our Sabians, the men of stature, those that come from Ham, those that come from Cush, those that come from the compensating because they were chastised and reproved and sent away with great shame, that you are not to sit there and look upon the exploitation of your father. And that whole thing that Ham participated in was the same thing that Cain participated in, is the same thing that Lucifer participated in, or Nadab and Abihu. You cannot come before God and look upon his nakedness and think of all the ways in which you could disrespect and then exalt and glorify yourself and try to seize worship that only belongs to God. And then now you're at war with God because this is about two gods that are fighting. If you cannot make the connection, it's because you secretly want to play this game. So Isaiah 45:14 says, and thus says the Lord, the labor of Egypt and merchandise of Cush and of the Sabians, men of stature. So where does Egypt come from? Ham. Where does Cush come from? Ham. Where are the Sabians coming from? Ham. This is the compensators. This is the, I need to be powerful. I need to be great. I need to be violent. I need to insist upon that you look at me as a god. I'm in constant, desperate clinging on because of my self-loathing and the darkness that is vacuous in my soul. I need to constantly push against that and do the opposite of everything that I feel. I want you to worship me as a god. Men of stature, wearing great robes, please don't just become fleshy as I'm talking about this. Look at the psychology of this, but why the fine clothes? Why the expensive perfumes? Why the things that you purchase to give the impression to everyone around you of how important you are? Why name brands? Who cares about name brands? You do. Why? Because that says something about you. So here we go. Shall come over to you, and they shall be yours. Hold on, let me do something real quick. And there we go. Sorry, you're not gonna be racist here, and you're not gonna be judging here. So I've taken care of that. All right. Shall come over to you, and they shall be yours, and they shall walk behind you. They shall come over in chains, and they shall what? Bow down to you. This is that spirit. And it's in the church. We want everyone to bow down to us. We're all about clout culture, being legit, being worshiped. Men of stature. It has nothing to do with race. It has to do with the energy and the spirit that is in all fallen, nafal, men and women and children. They will make supplication to you. Surely God is in you, and there is no other. There is no other God. But this is the desire to be worshiped as a vessel of God and to say God is in you, but you want to drink from that worship. Let me see here. That's the sad reality of that. Jeremiah. I mean, these are people that say, I believe the doctrine that God's going to be so in me that we don't need Jesus anymore. That we're going to be walking around as gods. And everyone's going to say, look at how beautiful and enchanting you are. And then people are selling that as a perfection doctrine, but it's really about their glorification. Jeremiah 22:14, who says, I will build myself a wide house with spacious chambers, cut out windows, paneling it with cedar and painting with vermilion. Painting it red. I will build myself a wide house with spacious chambers. This is this idea of making everything around you like you're a big deal. That you're pursuing things that get this image of how big you are, how vast you are, how breathtaking you are. The spirit. Jeremiah 31 verse 39 says, the surveyor's line shall again extend straight forward over all the hill of Gareb. And this is the word again for these long garments. measured out, and you are judging everyone according to your garments, according to you, according to your righteousness. This is the picture of self-righteous judgment, where it's the surveyor's line and shall again extend straight forward over all the hill of whatever. It's the idea that you are stretching out a line of measure and you're judging everyone to your beauty, your glory. I mean, delusional. They're not that glorious. Let's see. Let's wrap it up from why not? Yeah, you know what? We're going to do Nebuchadnezzar after this. And because Nebuchadnezzar and Belshazzar is extended. So let's just spend the time on those that are the fallen ones in the pre-flood, post-flood. And we're looking at the importance of understanding there is a spirit and nature of compensating, and it's made manifest in our world. And if we cannot look at it and make application to ourselves, we're missing the tools that God is giving us to say, that's a quality in me, and I'm seeking those qualities. And God has already pronounced a judgment against such hubris, such arrogance, such high-mindedness. We cannot chase after those things and expect to avoid the judgment and the condemnation of God. It is abhorrent to God. It is an abomination to God. The word abomination in Hebrew is the word for hateful. It's hateful to God. He hates the evil eye. He hates the fallen face. He hates those that compensate and use others as the audience, the studio audience for their worship. He hates that they're false gods. He hates that they want people to worship their image, that they are but human idols. And how dangerous that is. All right, let's wrap it up here. We're at about 2 hours, and so let's finish it up with just these verses as we apply this to the New Testament and hopefully applying it to ourselves. Ezekiel 40 verses 3 and 5, it says, and he took me there, and behold, there was a man whose appearance was like the appearance of bronze. And what did he do? He had a line of flax and a measuring rod in his hand, and he stood at the gateway. Now, this is the legitimate version of it, but those that, quote, wear these long garments that are doing it illegitimately are standing there as what? Cherub judging in bronze, which is a picture of judgment, a bronze serpent, anything bronze feet of Jesus, and fire is enveloping them. This is the picture of judgment. You're cursed of God, and the sky is bronze to you. You're like in a furnace of a crematorium. Like God is judging from above. It is bronze. And so this idea that you are, quote, have a line of flax and a measuring rod in his hand, that's the language that God was using through John the Baptist, where he was proclaiming the true judge is coming. The true judge is a sacrificial lamb. And we're not worthy to unlash his shoes, just as a kinsman redeemer, his sandals, because this is our Redeemer coming. And we're going to be judged of him. And he's going to lay down his life as an atonement. And when Jesus validated the ministration of John the Baptist, says, did you see a reed bending and flexing itself in the wind? Did you see that? Did you see a man wearing long garments? This is exactly what Jesus is talking about here. He took me there, and behold, there was a man whose appearance was like the appearance of bronze, and he had a line of flax and a measuring rod in his hand, and he stood in the gateway. Now, in Revelation chapter 11, these are the two witnesses. This is God using cherub-like, those that minister before the throne of God, measuring. And those that wear soft garments on earth with their measuring reed are playing out this judging cherub role that's been issued out forth to execute judgment from the throne of God. Well, there is Satan's version of it. There is the counterfeit of that. And once you start participating in that, you are running for Satan. You are carrying water for Satan. You are doing proxy work for Satan. You are doing the work of Zillah and Ada. You are going out as sons of perdition, and you are playing, LARPing, role-playing as judge and executioner and measuring everyone according to your amazing righteousness. And you are the hateful thing. We can't get past what this study is about. What does God hate? Proverbs 6 will tell you what God hates. He hates this game. He hates the signaling. He hates the arrogance. He hates the high-mindedness. He hates the self-righteousness. He hates the spirit of comparing yourself to others and judging others. He hates it. He hates it. He hates it. And it's a hateful thing to him. And it's an abomination that will cause your desolation. And we have this weird ability to deflect it away from us and never seeing us as the problem. Now, verse 5 says, now there was a wall all around the outside of the temple. In a man's hand was a measuring rod, 6 cubits, etc. And he measured the width of the wall of the structure, 1 rod in height. This is this word for long robes again. It is this judgment. It is this measurement. It is this role of a seraphim that is standing as a covering or of a cherub standing before the throne of God with this fiery sword, ready to give judgment. But you're doing that as an angel of light, as a minister of righteousness, and you cannot be more abhorrent to God. You cannot be more wicked than LARPing out that role, but you're really doing it for Lucifer. He's counterfeiting the throne of God. And nothing is more hateful than done under religious community. Worse than Hollywood. Ezekiel 42:17, and he measured the north side, and he measured all around, and there was a measuring line. I raised my eyes and I looked all around. Behold, these are the measures. These are the judges. These are the ones that had soft garments and measuring reeds. And Jesus absolutely said, did John the Baptist do that? No. He wasn't playing that game of Pharisees. He wasn't of the synagogue of Satan. You were. That's why he had to bear reproach outside the gate. That's why he wasn't invited to the parties. That's why he couldn't get on their podcast or on their whatever. That's why he's not speaking at the camp meetings. John didn't play ball with that game. You will be rewarded when you play ball with that game. When you decide to play the judge, the robes, and that you're the wonderful man who measures, and then don't offend me, don't wound me, don't take me from my prestigious place, don't call me not a master, not great. I have a puffy hat, and I have it in a glass case somewhere, and you better not make me feel bad for my arrogance. We don't call sin by its right name anymore. We're too busy chasing down obvious sinners like the Pharisees did. Look at that whore. Look at that drunkard. Look at that leper. Look at that alcoholic. Look at that lowlife. Look at that trailer trash. Look at that somebody doing clearly evil things. But what's interesting, those weren't the people that crucified Christ. Who crucified Christ? Fill in the blanks. Who did it? Who did it? The Romans didn't want to do it. They had to do it from expediency because they were so strong-armed that they literally used the name of Caesar, saying that Caesar's going to come and destroy you if you don't do what we do, because we have the ability to ring the phone of secular authorities, and we will ruin your job if you don't do this. You got it now, Pontius Pilate? You know what happens when we make that phone call? You're destroyed. And then they pursued the gospel of Jesus Christ that Paul was preaching and tried to hold court everywhere he went. These are the true enemies of the gospel. That's the synagogue of Satan. A lot of people just say it's modern Jews. No, it's not. It's amongst the religious class in Christianity, and God hates it. It's an abomination, and he will desolate the synagogue of Satan. And it's a spirit that's hardly even being identified because it's so well camouflaged and hidden. Mark chapter 12, verse 38 says, and he said to them in his teaching, beware of the scribes who desire to go around in what? Long robes. He was speaking Hebrew. And what do? You want to understand who these people are? Do you want to have identifying markers? This is going to be painful because we never want to use this as a way to litmus test or to identify or to get a diagnosis through these markers, through these blood panels. We don't want to identify the problem because this is how you know they love the greetings in the marketplaces. They love how everyone sees them as men are renowned, women are renowned, of the great ones, the mighty ones, the ones who judges, the one who measures according to their righteousness, and they're sitting there as God's messengers. And believe it or not, they're at war with God. Like the perfect, embedded right there at where the gospel is, right there where the Shekinah glory is. And they're hidden close to the glory of God. Those are the unpopular sins that are not called out. Our last verse in Luke chapter 20, verse 46, same reference. Beware the scribes and the Pharisees. Beware of them. The scribes are the lawyers. The scribes were the experts. The scribes, what's interesting is you'll notice here that these are the ones that are being very, it's the scribes. So who are the scribes? That's what I want to just touch on. That's how I want to end this study, is who are the scribes? The scribes were the ones that dealt with all the literature. They're the ones that did all the, they're the experts of theology. These were the theological lawyers. These were people that had YouTube channels that see themselves as God's defenders of theology. And there's an arrogance that attends to this. And so they're the experts. They're the lawyers. They think that by broadcasting their theory, their ideas and ideologies in debate, that these great defenders, these great long-robed defenders with their measuring rods, and they become very self kind of smug. It's a smugness. It's a smarmy, smug, fake humility, all this stuff. This was the scribes. Remember, it was scribes that would come up to Jesus and say, oh, good teacher. He's like, whoa, be careful. Be careful of your tendency to greet people with flattery, for you want the flattery reciprocated back to you. He says, well, I've kept all the commandments my whole life. Then go and sell all you have and be in a place of reproach and humility. There's no way, because he had great riches. This is that spirit. That's the synagogue of Satan. And I'm not saying that God doesn't love them, because he says he loved that lawyer, that theologian and defender. But that's what happens when your face drops and your eye becomes evil. When you're face to face with the glory of God, that strips you of your glory. That event that happened with the lawyer, the rich young ruler, is a picture of everybody that approaches the glory of God and the throne of God, and he doesn't approve of your offering. It's the Pharisee and the publican. He doesn't approve of your proud offering. And when God rejects it, which in this ministry, he has made it clear that he rejects these things, this ministry is not ever going to be a popular ministry, and it's never going to be a well-funded ministry. Because who wants to fund your own condemnation? Who wants to come out of your delusion? Who wants to no longer be drunk or intoxicated when it's been working for you? It's been giving you the rewards in this life, and you still get to have this religious cloak about you. So beware of these scribes, beware of these theologians, beware of these people that are supposed defenders of the doctrines like the Pharisees were. And most Pharisees were scribes. Well, I don't know about most, but I know a lot of them were scribes. Or I think all scribes are Pharisees, pretty close to it, who desire to do what? This is their lust. They go around in the long robes. That's what that word means. The renowned, the importance, the soft garments. Don't offend me. Don't wound me. I'm important. They love the greetings in the marketplaces. And the reason I have this is now here comes the extended. They love how everyone sees them, how they're greeted, how they're put upon the bill, upon the poster, upon the flyer. They love what? The best seats in the synagogues. I mean, it's a real payoff. There's brethren that I know now that see themselves as these scribes and these defenders, but they don't want to be chastised when they're chasing clout, glory, fame. And I've even recently had them text me, hey, remember when you did this research? Can I have this so I could go and sound smart? But what are they leaning towards? Money, fame, clout, ego, not wanting to be corrected, and then projecting it all on the messenger. This is what that's their currency. That's what they traffic in. You could be their friend as long as you tell them everything they want to hear. You flatter them, you kiss the ring, you lick the boot. If I did that, I would be pleasing men and not God. But they require that. And they want the best seats where? In the synagogues, the synagogue of Satan, the game that's being played under Christianity, under the remnant, under those that have clear access to the Day of Atonement and the commandments of God and the mercy seat, playing this game. It's called the abomination that will cause desolation. And the last thing says, and they love the best places at the feasts. The feasts were the religious gatherings, the required religious gatherings. So, yeah, they want to be keynote speaker at the camp meeting. And they want to run around and tell their spouse how great they are. And then she gets to play first lady. And we play into this game, and we see absolutely no reason to call that out of sin. In fact, we participate in it. In fact, we compliment them, and we praise them, and we massage their ego, and we take selfies with them. And we're feeding into this Nadab and Abihu, Eli's two sons, Ham, Lamech, Cain, Lucifer, Eve, Adam. Dangerous. Some have repented. Some have not. Once you start partaking of this fruit, it's the rare person that goes and sells all they have, give to the poor, pick up their cross, and follow Christ. And they are benched. They sit in the penalty box. They're sitting in the dugout. I remember this brother that one time I had a discussion with, and he was famous at the time in religious circles. His name was David Hawking. And he was with the Biola Hour, Calvary Chapel. And he got in trouble. And they were going to bench him for 5 years for something that he did that was out of order. I won't get into details. And he's a powerful speaker. I mean, powerful. And I remember I had a discussion with him, and he even said, "Wow, you got me on the debate on the Sabbath and on the law of God in the New Testament." And he conceded to that. He says, "Okay, that was good. You got me." Like, wow. And this is a man with an incredible voice, an incredible charismatic charm about him. Just had that natural ability for you to just love him and be influenced by him. Well, he did not want. He felt his ministry was so important that when the Biola University said you got to be benched for 5 years and come under kind of redirection, discipline, restoration, this kind of this build back process, he said, "No way, no way." And so what did he do? He left there and became a part of some ministry at Calvary Chapel called like the Door of Hope or something like that, Hope for Today or something, and continued on uninterrupted in his ministry. And I kid you not, it's like the Spirit of God left him. His preaching was so sentimental. It was so fake grace. It had no power from God. Yeah, he could get some insights. Yeah, he did the same research and study. But boy, did the Spirit depart, and he knew it not. He knew it not. And he died. And I don't know if he ever genuinely repented, because he did not want to not have the glory of the ministry. He wanted to be greeted in the marketplaces. He loved the best seats in the synagogue, and he wanted the best places at the feasts. And he did not want to be somebody that has to take it on the nose for a minute and realize that potentially he may have lost his public life. And if God were to ever restore it, it would be in God's way and his timing, his methods. But he didn't want to yield to that. That spirit of not wanting to come under God's appointed correction, discipline, reproof to the saving of your own soul. You would rather choose your glory and telling God he has to operate within that framework, but you get to keep your glory, is the abomination that started from Lucifer, in which Satan himself did not want to hear that he's got to go to the back of the line of the angels and be the least of the angels if he's going to remain in heaven. And he says, "There's no way. Your punishment is too hard for me, too difficult for my ego, for what feeding I was getting at having a long robe, love being greeted in the marketplaces, the best seats in the assembly, at the gatherings, that I'm keynote speaker. I can't give that up." God says, don't choose those privileges over your soul, because that becomes the choice at these crossroads. When you are confronted by God's discipline, chastisement, you're going to have to accept your wilderness wandering and the stigma that comes with it. And it's only under God's appointed time that he delivers you from that, when he realizes that that seat of glory is now manageable without your own self-prescription. We spare ourselves of God's prescription by a self-prescription, and we try to negotiate that with God. And God is telling us that our self-prescription will destroy us. The preservation of our glory is the evil eye, is the fallen face, it's the sin of Lucifer, and it's just as hateful to God today than it was the day that Lucifer's countenance fell. All right, everyone, thanks for being a part of this study time. God bless you. Let's stay in the spirit of saying, God, if there's anything there for me, let it apply to me. Let not the spirit of this world be a cloak for self-justification and insulation from the work that God's trying to do on our own hearts, because none of us are going to be glad or happy that we fended off the Holy Spirit in this age in which God's going to judge it and condemn it. We are in the days of Noah, whether you like it or not. The Spirit of God is trying to strive upon God's people. Will we let him convict us of the sin that God hates, that evil eye before the glory of God, and then cloaking the grandiosity of our sin with a heavy religious suit? And we're going to have to repent of that. Most won't. Few went into the ark. That sin is too addictive. And we're going to make a bargain with the grave and say, I don't care, it's worth it. The few people that can hear this say it's not worth it. Move into humility with God and choose him over your fame and over your glory.